Stevie Collier, and I'm sorry we're a little bit late. We just had some technical difficulties. I'm here with my co-host, Andy Peliquin, and we are honored to have our guest, Alan Baxter, and he... Well, wait, hold on. I just was listening to myself. Alan Baxter is the author of Devouring Dark, which is a standalone novel, and I believe we are reading an excerpt from that today. Am I correct?
Yeah. I think you've got the first chapter of that one, yeah.
Okay, and Alan, where are you coming from? Where do you hail from, good sir?
Well, I was born in England, so I grew up in the UK, but I'm in dairy country in New South Wales and Australia now, about 2 hours south of Sydney. I've lived in Australia for 20-something years.
Oh, wow. Okay. What took you to Australia?
A pretty girl. Originally, I was just traveling. I spent pretty much 2 years just walking around with a backpack and a guitar and just seeing things. But along the way, I met a girl who joined me for the rest of the trip, and then we got married, and it was a choice of go to England or Australia, and really that's an easy choice. So now I live in Australia.
Wow, you know what? You were our second guest who went to Australia, found a pretty girl, and stayed there.
There's a lot of pretty girls in Australia.
Is there?
It seems to be, yeah.
Do you guys surf?
You know what? In more than 20 years here, I never have. I body surf a lot, and I have a boogie board, like a short board, and I get in the water a lot, but I've never actually done genuine surfing, and I keep saying I want to. It's just finding the time. But I figure one day maybe my son will want to surf, and maybe we'll learn together. So he's only 5 right now.
You have a son?
Yeah. He's at school right now. He's in his first year primary school. He's 6 in a couple of months. So
cool, awesome. It's always cool to have a dad who's a fantasy author.
Yeah, thanks, Stevie.
Yeah. What? Before we get to the podcast, I'm just curious. What about the sharks? I hear that's a lot of surfers are a little bit nervous to surf in Australia because everything can kill you.
Yeah, everything, land, sea, and air. There's no way you can go and not die. Yeah, that is partly what puts me off surfing, because I love to be in the ocean. I love to be in the waves and body surfing and stuff like that. But I don't like getting out of my depth. I don't like looking down and it's dark down there, because there's monsters with huge teeth. So that really does sort of put me off. And yeah, we had a guy had his leg taken off at the beach, where I live and where I walk my dog.
Jesus.
Less than a year ago, a guy, a surfer, had his well, not really his leg taken off, but a large part of his leg taken off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fun story. I was surfing in San Diego, and a helicopter flew over us and ordered us all to leave, get out of the water. And turns out there was an orgy of hammerheads below us.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and when sharks are doing their thing, they're a little aggressive. So they had the Coast Guard brought the helicopter. I was freaked out. I didn't surf for a while after that, but anyway.
For a minute there, I thought you were saying like a school of sharks or a group of sharks. It's called an orgy of hammerheads, but it's an actual real orgy.
They were making babies below us.
Making shark babies. That would be a pretty funny name, though. An orgy of hammerhead sharks.
An orgy of... Oh, I'm trying to do the English accent. I don't know why.
It would be a toolbox of hammerheads, wouldn't it?
Ha ha. That's
nicely done. Dad joke right there. Dad joke for the win.
Boom.
So, Alan, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, you know where I live. I live in dairy country, so this is partly why there are technical issues, because Australian internet is shocking, and it gets worse the further away from urban centres you get. But otherwise, I'm a martial artist. I run a kung fu academy. That's sort of my day job.
A what?
Which is a kung fu academy. I teach Chinese kung fu.
Oh, what style?
Choi Lei Fat. It's Southern Shaolin style.
Interesting.
I've been doing that for forever, really. So yeah, I call it a day job, but it's mostly evenings and mornings and whatever else. It's not actually daytime, but I'm either teaching kung fu or taking care of my son if he's home, or I'm writing. That's kind of my that's the shape of my life. So it's pretty good. It's taken a long time and a lot of hard work to sort of set up like this, but it works well now. So I'm semi full-time teaching martial arts and semi full-time writing. And my wife, I've trained her up now. She's a master in her own right. She runs the school with me, and she's also an artist. So she's either painting or we're training. And so between all those things, we just about managed to scrape by.
That is so freaking cool. I studied Hung Gar for a year, so I mean,
well, our style originated out of Hung Gar. The founder of our style, one of the first things he studied was Hung Gar and the Changar style of his uncle, and then slowly developed to become our style. So
that's cool.
You'll be familiar with our moves. Yeah.
Awesome. So Alan, what we do, we kind of throw the guest author into this, and that is we choose something cool or interesting that happened to us within a week or two, maybe a month. And we each take turns. I think Andy and I will go first to give you some time to think about something cool. I'm sure as a Kung Fu master, you might have some things.
It's not often as interesting as you might think, but sure, maybe.
You don't have like rival schools come in like, you're on our turf.
You know what? Back in the day, that happened. And unfortunately, everyone's so litigious these days that you get some idiot who can't do anything and sets up a school and starts teaching rubbish. And if you go and beat him up for it, you get in trouble now. Back in the day, you'd solve it the old way, but these days you just have to put up with it.
Yeah, and they used to do it in China or Japan, right? They would go challenge other schools, was it?
Yeah. Well, even my teacher came over from Guangzhou to Sydney in '83. And even in those early days, he fought off a few challenges to earn his place to keep his school in Sydney's Chinatown. So relatively recently, even then, he did that stuff. So, but these days it's not the same, which is a shame because there's a lot of charlatans out there teaching rubbish, but you just have to hope people see through it.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, let's Andy, do you want to go first?
Hey, why don't you go first, Stevie? I'm trying to think of something cool.
Well, actually, I was reading the comments, and I agree. Sharks are they're really, really cool creatures. When I was in high school, I studied them a lot. I don't know why. I think they are something to be careful of whenever they're having sex a lot under you while you're surfing and you look like a big seal. But besides that, I read a lot. And you know what's funny? Fun fact real quick, and then I'll shut up. Peter Benchley, who wrote Jaws, turned around and was very unhappy that he scared people from sharks. His book was the #1 reason why sharks became so scary, that he wrote one book that talked about how sharks are our friends and stuff like that. Really cool read, and yeah, pretty interesting. And so anyway,
I think it's worth remembering that sharks are, if you walk into someone's house and just start stomping around, don't be surprised if they punch you in the face. So the ocean's not our place; it's their place. So you kind of need to respect that.
Yeah. Is this from experience? If someone walked into your house, Alan?
And I punched them in the face. No, but I would if they did.
Yeah.
If someone came in uninvited, you would think you'd need to defend your space. So yeah, I mean, when people complain about sharks biting them in the sea, it's like, well, that's their house.
Yeah. Well, I just like sharks anyway. What was I gonna say?
Oh, they're cool. Yeah.
The cool thing for me for this week, I started Japanese class. I've taken 2 courses. I mean, two courses, 2 classes. Super, super, super fun. I feel so sorry for that. I actually have to be quiet. I'm not brilliant at Japanese or anything, but I know a lot of kanji. I already know how to read and write hiragana and katakana. So I ask a little bit more complex questions, maybe like lower Japanese 2 course stuff. Because I'm fascinated, and I'm not trying to be rude to the other students, but I'm scaring the other students. I did the same thing in French class, and my teacher actually had to pull me aside. So I get a little bit bored in class, but when she talks about culture stuff, I am, oh God, everything just all things bad in life just melt away, and I just am just fascinated. We learned how to bow the other day. Are you kidding me? That was so much fun. So real quick, what we learned, and I'm guessing most people know this, is Hajimemashite, Stevie desu. Dozo yoroshiku. I got to do it anime.
You definitely sound like an anime.
I talk in Japan.
I've been watching Death Note in Japanese.
Woo, good stuff.
And the one thing that I remember, like I saw this and I was like, oh my God, I used to do that, is when they get home, they say Tadaima. It means I'm home. It's the greeting that the people.
Tadaima.
Yeah. And it's like, it's been 20 years or something, and I used to do that when I was
nostalgic.
Yeah, yeah. And
Oh,
so listening to all of the things, like every time they say "dams," and it's that was the first curse word that I learned in Japanese.
Is it
I always thought it was G'day when they got home because that's the Australian version. G'day ma.
Okay, ma. Whoa, you're pretty clever, Alan. That's pretty good. That's the second awesome witty thing you've said, and both I'm stealing. So yeah, Japanese class is awesome. It's one of the most thing I look forward to in the week. Besides that, the Jigsaw Blade is coming out on Audible October 1st.
Woohoo!
So super excited about that. It's published by Podium. I've listened to it, part of it. It's freaking amazing. Love it. And so those are two really cool things. And a shout out to Rajin and Rebecca, who gave me my first Japanese Jisho dictionary. I really appreciate it, guys. And keep checking your mailbox because something special is on the way to you guys. So that is my cool thing for the week, Japanese class.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Alan, have you thought of your cool thing yet?
Well, the only thing that's occurred to me so far is marginally self-promotional. So I suppose it's
that's fine.
I guess this is a best environment for it. Well, I've got a new short story collection coming out next month, published by Grey Matter Press, and at the start of this week, I just saw the cover for that, and everything about to all sort of go live. That's all coming live, and it's a sweet cover. It's really cool, and it kind of ties back in a little bit to the look of my first short story collection, which is pretty smart on the part of the publisher. So that was a cool thing that happened to me this week. And honestly, otherwise, it's been a pretty quiet week. I will finish here, and I'll remember some major life event that I've completely blanked from my memory at this stage.
You didn't punch a shark or anything?
Say it again, sorry?
You didn't punch a shark this week or anything? Maybe strangle a sea turtle? Or wait, those aren't dangerous.
No,
no,
they're kind of cool. They normally get strangled by plastic bags on their own. They don't need any help.
That's why I cut my soda things.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, no, it's winter here, so I'm not anywhere near the ocean at the moment because by Australian standards, it's cold right now. So
this is the second time, and Andy knows this, that I thought it was summer for you guys too. I just my mind can't wrap myself. So it's cold.
Stevie has no concept of north versus south. He goes east and west just fine, but north and south he kind of struggles with.
Well, no, I've got a jumper on, and you can't see it, but just there's a heater just behind me that's on because it's like 12 degrees today, whatever that is in your money. I don't know, 12 centigrade.
12 centigrade is like a cool autumn day in Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's at nighttime here, in the middle of winter, and every once in a while we get a frost. So it gets down to like 0 or 1, 2 degrees centigrade. A few nights in the middle of winter, and we're just coming out of that now. So we're on the way back up, heading towards spring. But it's still pretty cold. But I don't go anywhere near the ocean because the water's okay. The water's still probably 18, 20 degrees, which is not too bad. But when you get out and it's 12 degrees and there's a wind blowing, that's messed up. So.
Yeah, that's when it hurts.
Fun, 2-second story. Hurricane was hitting Gulf of Mexico. I went surfing. Third sentence. I'm an idiot. But it was a lot of fun.
Would have been good waves, yeah.
Surfing Texas, I never thought possible, but if there's a hurricane, and it works. Anyway, so let's get on with the podcast. Real quick, quick announcement. Go check out Alan Baxter on Amazon. I hadn't seen Alan's face, but I went and checked on him on Amazon. I was immediately like, oh my God, this guy's presence is so, he's, it's like, no, you're a Kung Fu master, and I see it now because you're like this, like just ready to kick some ass.
There was a photo shoot for a while, and they got me to do all kinds of poses for a photo shoot, and that's probably the least ridiculous one, but I quite like that photo. So yeah, that tends to be my standard.
I did one too, and it's on xvideos.com. It was weird. No, just kidding. I hope no one else knows that website. It's
no.
Never, Andy, take it away, man.
So we're moving on to the topic for the week, right?
Yes, let's do it, man.
So it was interesting that Alan brought up the concept of justice versus injustice. What made you think of that? What from your book brought that to mind, Alan?
Honestly, I don't really know. It's just something that's sort of innate in me and has been for a long time. And it took readers to point it out from a while ago that so much of my stuff seems to deal with those subject consequences for being dumb, and justice and injustice, and how that sort of affects the world and affects people. And I think I just have this innate sense of justice, and different things make different people really uncomfortable. And if I see something unjust going on, I can't. I'm the person that steps in when someone's being an idiot on public transport, or if it's, I've sort of wandered into fights on the street before when two people are giving somebody else a hard time, and that person might have deserved a hard time. I don't know it, but when I see that sort of imbalance in around me, it affects me deeply. So I don't know. It's just something I tend to explore a lot in my fiction, and the world is a very unjust place. Like with Devouring Dark, a lot of the principle behind that, a lot of the sort of basic theme of that is that decent people get sick and die for no reason, whereas assholes just carry on and live to a ripe old age and never get called up on their behavior. That's just the sort of state of the world, and that really bothers me. Not that I really wish anyone dead, but that it bothers me that good people have bad things happen to them for no reason. It's just the state of the world, but it's something that sort of grinds against me all the time. So I tend to explore it a lot in the work that I do. So
you're like a chaotic good.
Yeah, maybe so. Chaotic is definitely true.
You sound like I don't know if it's an Australian thing or if this translates over to Australia or England, but in America that's called a sheepdog. It's like a protector of everyone. They always have their eyes open and aware, and if they see something going on, they're not afraid to I say get involved, but that seems like it's none of your business. But like if someone's getting hurt and they're obviously overpowered by the other person, even if they're wrong, this sheepdog would step in and it's like, hey, stop, and call the cops.
Yeah, that's it.
That's
exactly
what a sheepdog is. So that's what it reminded me of.
In London years ago, because it doesn't always work in your favor. Years and years ago in London, it was late and I was walking. It was a quiet street and I heard sort of shouting and arguing, and I couldn't really tell where it was coming from. And then as I kept walking, it was down a side street and there was a guy that had a girl up against the wall by a net like that. And I was like, holy shit. And so I just dragged him off and said, what the hell are you doing? What's going on? He started getting aggro. And I'm basically holding him off. And then the next thing, she's jumped onto my back and started smacking me in the back of the head, going, leave my boyfriend alone. So, there's sometimes you try to do the right thing and you pay for it as well. Who knows what the hell's going on? But yes, exactly. That's the sort of thing I can't ignore. It astounds me where you see these videos all the time online of someone being just a racist idiot and being really abusive, and there's like a bus full of people all just sort of sitting there staring and not doing anything about it. And that I don't get it. I don't understand how people can just not do anything. And if one person stands up, then other people will stand up as well. And before you know it, the bus full of people are standing up against this one idiot, but they never do. And it's amazing.
Your kung fu style must be hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
If it's from it's probably hard, huh?
Yeah, well, it's a very traditional and complete system. So we have right through from the sort of qigong side of things. It's a very complete system, but at its base and at its introduction, it's a very long and external and powerful aggressive system at the start. So yeah, maybe that shows through somewhat.
If you teach kung fu through Skype, man, this is another great advertisement for you.
Yeah, true. Yeah, do some online courses.
Yeah. And you looked like you had something to say.
Yeah. So there's the Myers-Briggs test. I'm guessing you have a J in your test.
You know what? I've never actually done it. I'm aware of that, and I'm aware of what it is, and you see it around. People put it in their online bios sometimes, but yeah, I've never done it. So I don't actually know, but maybe I should. What's J? Aggressive?
Justice. Like on one side of things, let me see. I'll tell you. On one side of things, it's justice, and then on the other side, it's something else. Let me see.
What is it? Yeah, because Lisa's an INTJ, so she's got that justice side.
Judgment versus
Judgment and perception is what Lisa said.
So there is a certain amount of judging in the sense of you analyze the situation and pass a judgment as opposed to perceiving, which I believe is a little bit more like intuitive, more based on gut feelings. But I have the J as well, and I'm very much about the justice. Like when it comes to doing chores, let's say for my kids, it's like, all right, well, you did the dishes today, so it's her turn tomorrow. Things like that. My wife's like, no, that's not, you shouldn't do that. You should just say everybody cleans, everybody does the job. And for me, it doesn't work in my brain like that. It's like, we're all going to do an equal share to make sure that everything is clean or something like that. So there is a certain sense of justice that's very innate to my personality as well. But the interesting thing, you were talking about the one person being an asshole on a bus and then one person standing up and everybody stands up. That's like classic fantasy. There's always that scene that no one's standing up, and then the one person, obviously the hero of the scene, or the protagonist, stands up, and then everybody stands up. And that's like, I can't think of a single novel essentially where that doesn't happen, where the one person takes action and then everybody else follows along.
I think I read so much of that kind of fantasy as well when I was young, when I first started discovering fantasy and reading all the classics of the time, like the David Eddings and all that sort of stuff, and Ursula Le Guin and Anne McCaffrey, all those sorts of books. So much of that they deal with justice and people righting wrongs and the bad guys getting caught. Grimdark and stuff these days changes that around a little bit, but fantasy back in those days, it's it really was about sense of justice and good versus evil.
But even now, there is a certain sense of justice no matter what you write. Like, as an example, in my Assassin series, which is pretty grimdark, there's a scene in Darkblade Savior, the last book in the series, where he's like, all right, we've all got to fight to get out of here, and no one had taken that first step to fight until he does. It's just whether no matter how dark the story, there's always going to be those people who won't stand up until someone else does, or who won't try to break out or even think about breaking out until someone else shows them the way. It's there's so many people in the world who are just leaders, that are just followers, that they they excel at being middlemen and supporters and henchmen and the mob, and then it takes that one person to be the leader in whatever sense, whatever situation it is, to make things happen.
I think there's I'm paraphrasing and I can't actually remember where even the phrase comes from, but it basically comes to stand up for justice even if you stand alone, because you'll give other people a place to stand.
Exactly.
If you're the one who stands up, then other people look and go, well, I can go and stand next to that guy, whereas they wouldn't have stood up on their own in the first place. And so,
exactly. That's how riots happen essentially, or anything, is because there's all these people doing the same thing, going the same direction, and then someone does something riotous or that breaks outside the social conventions, and then everyone thinks it's okay to do the same thing. So there's almost this innate sense of equality that we all have, in the sense of we all want to find, we want everything to be equal, to be just.
I mean, you can do it with the most simple experiment, which you just find a street with a tall building and just stop and stare up at the top of the tall building. Just stand there and start looking at the top of it, and somebody else will come and they'll see you and they'll look up. If you just don't say anything, give it 5 minutes and there's 20 people standing there looking up at the building, wondering what's going on. Then you just walk away and you leave 20 people staring at the building, waiting for something to happen. And they're all talking to each other. What's going on? What are we looking at? I don't know. What's happening? And there's this sort of that's just a snapshot of this kind of it's like this social cohesion that we have as people, but it's also a pack mentality that we have as people. And so exactly as you say, if someone starts rioting, then other people will go, well, he's taking a TV, I'm going to take a TV too. Whereas if one person says, hey, stop taking TVs, that's not on, then other people might go, yeah, you know what, that's not on. So
that's awesome. I'm totally going to do that the next time I'm in a big city.
Sorry, hang on just 1 second. I'm live. That was my wife coming home, who wasn't supposed to be home for a couple of hours yet. I thought she was going somewhere else. So there you
go. So actually, I was talking to my uncle, who was a police officer for like 30 years, and I was asking him about, air marshals, because I had this rumor that, they're on every flight. Stop eating my hair. And
Stop it, Lisa. Stop doing that.
Stop eating my hair, Lisa. This cat likes to eat hair. I don't know why. Some cats like plants. She likes hair.
My cat would chew my armpit hair. If I was laying in bed, she'd come and chew my armpit hair, which was just the weirdest sensation.
It's
anyway,
so
sorry,
weird.
That's a tangent.
And I asked him, are air marshals on every flight? He said no, and that they don't need to be anymore. And there's this weird thing that happened after September 11th, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard stories that if anyone goes crazy or does something weird, most people on that flight are going to stand up and fight or do something about it. And there's been, I think, one person died from it. Yeah, he had a psychotic episode because he was off his meds, and they suffocated him by sitting on him. Wow. A lot of the men got up and put him down, and they suffocated him to death. And that's the one story he brought up. But there was also, have you guys seen the one where the Muslim guy, he was praying in the middle of the plane, and he was blocking traffic in that lane. But anyway, it's just an interesting thing that my uncle talked about, that now people are going to stand up. It's kind of the opposite.
Yeah, I suppose they've set a precedent in some way that there's somebody on the plane to stand up. So if you assume there's an air marshal there with a gun, then maybe you jump up too, expecting the support of the guy, whether he's there or not. So,
where's the gun?
Yeah.
So what?
But it always makes me laugh on that front anyway. Like with you can kill people with a pen or a credit card, but they give you plastic cutlery, and say, I could kill someone with a plastic knife. So that in itself is kind of unusual. But yeah,
anything is a weapon to you, Alan.
Well, yeah, that's true to a degree, but it doesn't take much to learn these things. A credit card can be quite deadly if you know how to use it. So, they don't take your credit cards off you on the plane.
Yeah, that interest is killer.
That's a bad joke. That's not even a dad joke. That's a bad joke.
That's a bad joke. So what book is this? Stop. What book is this theme in?
With the justice and stuff?
Yeah, see stuff in chapter 1.
Yeah, actually, yeah, because to some degree, it crops up in a lot of what I do in more or less sort of veiled ways. With Devouring Dark, very much so, because the story of that it's without giving too much away at the start, it's the story of a guy who has a very dark power that is destroying him, and so he's going to use it to try to clean up the world a little bit before it does destroy him. And there's lots of other stuff going on, and there's a lot more sort of reason for that as to his motivation and everything else. But the opening chapter is an introduction to him and his particular brand of vigilantism. So yeah.
Awesome. Andy, have you had any experiences having to serve some cold hard justice?
No.
I'm trying to think if I have. I don't think I really, for me it's been nothing special, just stopping bullying, which is like, if you've watched this podcast a lot, that's like my pet peeve. Like, that to me is the worst, is bullying. And there's a lot of forms of bullying,
Yeah, right.
I took this girl on a date one time, and she got really sick and threw up in the theater, and she didn't even make it to the bathroom. It was horrible. It was KFC too. It was just nasty. And she was in there, and I guess the other teenagers there didn't know it was me, and they called her a stupid bitch. And that, to me, just didn't cut it. So I stood up for her. I guess that would be my best example of the justice that I served. But
bullying is the root of it for me as well. I mean, I was relentlessly bullied in school. I had a bad time in school.
Me too.
And that's why I took up the martial arts in the first place. And when I was little, my dad used to do judo when he was young. And I was being bullied, and he said to me one day, look, maybe you need to do something to even this up, because bullies, especially really dumb bullies, tend to only speak one language. And he said, I used to do judo. Why don't you go to judo classes? And then if they start pushing you around, you can throw them out of the way and leave. And so that was the start of my martial arts career. The first thing I did for a couple of years was judo. And then my judo teacher moved away, and that's when sort of things changed. And I used to watch the Monkey TV show. I loved the hell out of that, and realized that was Kung Fu. And so that this is how things progressed. But bullying was the root of that. And so that's and I have a real problem with bullying like that as well. Another incident that happened to me was on George Street in the centre of Sydney. It can be a sort of rough and lively place on the weekend. And one guy nearly killed himself, throwing himself in front of a taxi, trying to swing a shot at me because there was these 3 guys and they were hassling the hell out of this one guy. And so I waded in and said, what are you doing? They were just idiots. They were just drunk probably. And they turned on me, and this guy swung a shot at me, and I just stepped out of the way, and he spun all the way around and started heading into the road. And there was a taxi coming along and grabbed him and pulled him back out of the road. But that's an example of that bullying and that ganging up, and that's just bullying. It's rough and it's violent. It's on the streets, but it's still just idiots imposing their will on other people for no reason other to make themselves feel better. So, yeah.
Well, should we get to the reading?
Let's do it.
Get a little taste of Alan. Oh, that sounded
so wrong, Stevie.
I didn't mean it that way. I'm
sure I'd be very sweet.
Yes, your cat thinks so.
And a little sour.
All right. So, is there any dialogue? Yeah, there is. There's Matt and Mr. John Sullivan, right?
Yeah. So this will test you because Matt is a Scotsman and Sullivan is a Londoner.
All right. I'll do the Scotsman.
All right. Yeah.
What kind of Scots? Like Highlander or like Edinburgh?
Probably more like Edinburgh. He's been living in London for I can't remember exactly. I think something like 8 years at this point. So his accent would have been softened. So,
all right, I think I can try to fake my way through that. So I guess you should probably do Matt, Alan, and Stevie. That leaves you as a narrator.
Sure thing. Again, as usual, I really apologize for everything I'm going to say wrong. As Rebecca says, I have the reader.
Do you want? Am I reading in this as well, or
you're doing Matt?
Yeah, you're gonna be the anytime Matt talks, that'll be you.
Oh, all right. So that's the Scottish accent. So all of a sudden, you've got me doing a Scottish accent.
Oh wait, I thought Sullivan was the Scottish.
No, Sullivan's a Londoner.
All right, so I'll do Matt then, and you'll do Sullivan.
I'll do Sullivan's dialogue. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just opening up the thing now because I didn't have that open. I thought you guys had done it.
God, he's so unprepared.
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Devouring Dark, Chapter 1. Okay, first of all, is it McLeod? McLeod?
McLeod, right?
McLeod. Yeah, McLeod.
Boom.
Way off.
My wife, I only know this because my wife came home the other day and she was talking about weird, strangely spelled names. And she asked me, how do you pronounce this? Just so I could get it wrong and she could correct me and be right, of course. But
and talking of Scottish accents and stuff like that, it's only a small sort of like homage, but the reason his surname is McLeod is from the old Highlander movie.
So well, if it's Scottish, wouldn't it be Mac, MAC, or no?
It depends. There are different reasons for one way or the other. They both occur, and in this case, we went with the MC.
Okay.
But, there's a whole history on which way around those go and why.
Yeah. So this is interesting. I was actually at a retreat with a Scottish author recently, and he said that the Mac means that you belong to a clan, or your ancestors were one of the Highland clans, or the Scottish clans, and the people who don't have a Mac or a Mick in their name they're not descended from clansmen.
Yeah, or they're affiliate to clansmen. So my name's Baxter, which is that's a Scottish surname, but it's not a Mook because we weren't our own clan, but we were part of Clan Macmillan. So we were back in the day. The Baxters were sort of affiliated with Clan Macmillan, but as we weren't the actual clan, we don't have the Mook. So
awesome. Well, you guys ready?
Do it.
All right. Devouring Dark, Chapter 1. Matt McLeod knew the old adage that light is supposed to push away the darkness, but he also knew it wasn't true. Light sits on top, like a film of oil on water. The dark is still there, underneath, deep, permanent, waiting. And usually it's enough, that surface gain of brightness, to keep a soul from the yawning black abyss below. But once the cracks appear, the fall is inevitable, and the darkness devours. Knowing this truth, Matt often wondered how long he had left. Though he was convinced time was largely irrelevant, he was already falling. Had been for years. How much damage he could do on the way down, who he could take with him. Those were better concerns. He killed the engine of his battered old car, and silence descended. The dashboard glow winked out, leaving him an inky shadow, just the streetlights refracting through raindrops on the windscreen for company. Cold and wet, a classic London night. The alley across the quiet road glistened like a throat ready to swallow. Sullivan would be along any time now. Matt rolled a short, thin joint, just a sprinkling of weed to take the edge off. He didn't particularly enjoy being stoned anymore, but the process hurt a little less if he was buzzing. Not really high. That would dull his reactions too much. It was a balancing act, like everything in life. Just enough self-medication, but not so much as to cease being what they call a fully functioning adult. Whatever the fuck that really meant. The bluish smoke drifted lazily around Matt's head as he watched the alley, and then there Sullivan was, entering from the other end, parkling gloomy and dripping behind the silhouette of his bulk. Shit, but he was a big bastard. Not that size really mattered, muscles being no match for the dark. Matt drew deeply of the spliff, and it singed his fingers as it crackled away to almost nothing. Pressing the tiny roach into the car's ashtray, he readied himself, then opened the door and stepped out. The cold and persistent drizzle bit instantly through his warm comfort, and only on leaving did he realize how safe and embracing the car had been. Another metaphor for life right there. He headed across the street for the alley, aiming to meet his target halfway down. John Sullivan, 39, single, worked by day as a used car salesman, which made him a scumbag already, but his extracurricular activity was of far more interest to Matt, and why Matt was here. Sullivan paid no attention to anything as he trudged through the rain, hiding under a flat cap, hunched in a trench coat. Large industrial bins lined one side of the alley. Various detritus, rubbish bags, broken bottles littered and glistened among the puddles on the rough asphalt underfoot. Sullivan tramped through it all. When Sullivan was in the shadows just over halfway along, Matt stepped from the eyes of the street into the privacy of his ignored corner of the city.
Mr. John Sullivan.
Matt's voice was strong, not showing the nerves that rippled through him. The man paused, looked up quickly, a moment of shock passing over his face before he settled back to his default of belligerent bastard.
What? Who are you?
I'm your comeuppance, old son.
The big man's eyes narrowed, and he tipped his head to one side. A slight smile started, and Matt could not stand for that. He began the litany.
Jeremy Roberts, aged 8, violated in the change room of the football field at Edgware.
The man's smile faded.
Tony Small, aged 7, same location. Justin O'Leary, aged 8, ran into you in the public toilets at the Argyle shopping centre and was never the same again.
Who the fuck are you, you short-ass jock?
Sullivan's demeanor wavered between horror and anger. His East London accent heightened.
What are you talking about?
He was confused by Matt's confidence in a frame only 5'9" and thinner than some lengths of rope. He must be sure he could shatter such a skinny body. But the things Matt was saying were discomforting to him, as they were intended to be.
Aye, you know exactly what I'm talking about,
Matt said, letting his Scottish accent out more as it seemed to annoy the guy.
Shall I go on? Stuart Glenn, aged 9, your nephew's birthday party at your own brother's house.
Sullivan roared and rushed forward, anger winning. Matt braced and let the man grab him by the lapels of his thick black donkey jacket. Matt's shaggy hair, soaked now with rain, fell across his eyes as he was slammed into the grimy wall, his scuffed black combat boots swinging a good 2 feet off the ground. The air rushed out of him and his vision crossed, but his hands found the big bastard's wrists and wrapped around them, skin to skin. It was all he needed. The cracks opened like Matt's bones were splitting and his flesh peeling off, and the dark came through. Even stoned, it was agony. Matt grimaced, wondered why he'd never seemed to get used to it, but instead it hurt more every time. Short-term agony for long-term relief. But how long until he couldn't bear it?
Dark attracts itself like iron filings to a magnet, mate,
Matt said through clenched teeth. Sullivan stared at his hands, curled into Matt's jacket, trying to make sense of the blackness that swirled like ink and water through his skin. His forearms were exposed a few inches, and the dark went that way, swimming up his arms, snaking towards his heart.
The fuck is this?
He managed.
But it hurts, doesn't it?
Matt asked him. Sullivan shook, his legs weakening. He staggered back, dropped to his knees, hands losing their hold on the coat, but Matt kept his grip on the thick wrists. Matt's breath was ragged as he let the darkness through, let it reach up from whatever nether region it inhabited. When his vision started to fail from the pain of the transfer, he let go and stumbled away. The pain didn't ease. The dark stretched between them, palms to arm, like tar. Matt backed off far enough to sever it, and it writhed in the air like cut worms before it soaked back in. He forced it down, closed the connection, denied it the further release for which it yearned. His teeth gritted against the agony in his bones. He would have peace from it for a few months again now, assuming he could get it back under control. Sullivan sat back on his heels, staring at his withered, blackened hands like a crone's claws. He tore apart his shirt to see the stains spreading across his chest as the skin sank tight over his ribs, up his neck, to engulf his face. His eyes filled up like empty vessels, accepting oil, and those sightless black orbs turned briefly towards Matt before he shivered and collapsed face first into the rain. His clothes, soaked, settled around him and clung to a suddenly wasted skeletal frame. He twitched once, then stilled. Matt sank to his knees, desperate to breathe away the pain through his body. The cost of his ability was getting higher, the hurt more intense and long-lasting. He needed to drag the body away to his car, take it somewhere and hide it. It was easy enough to break up those brittle remains, smash them into unrecognizable dust, but his hands shook, his legs trembled. He couldn't lift a kitten, let alone a man, even one withered by the darkness. For several minutes, Matt gasped for air, wishing the pain to ease, and it finally began to settle just a little. He couldn't stay long. Someone might come any moment. Already he had pushed his luck too far. One of the large industrial waste bins stood nearby, half open, and he knew there were no cameras here. He had done his homework, not only on the man himself, but on the chosen location of his... What is that? Comeuppance. The idea of hauling the corpse out of his car was too much, but Matt dredged up the strength to shoulder it off the ground. Though it was only bones and blackened skin wrapped in sodden clothes, its weight was almost too much for him to bear. He had never been this weak after a delivery before. He managed to tip it over the edge into the skip. He snapped up the long limbs, folded the whole mess in on itself, then dragged cardboard and other detritus over the top to conceal it. Finally, he slid the cover fully closed, gasping for breath, and collapsed back to his knees, vision swirling and swimming. It would have to do. With any luck, the body wouldn't be noticed until it went up into a garbage truck and got dumped to rot at the local tip. Hopefully, it would never be seen again. Tears streaked Matt's cheeks, lost in the rain. He looked up. He looked to the black, rain-filled clouds and whispered,
"Another one for you, Tommy. I'm so sorry."
He staggered to his car, turned the heater up full, and drove for home. His hands shook like he had a palsy as he weakly gripped the wheel, wheeling the hurting to ease. His bones to close together again. Surely he would not be able to do this for much longer. The next one, maybe the one after that, must certainly kill him too. He drove slowly and carefully, in need of a large scotch and a hot bath.
Damn!
Yeah.
It's like Ghost Rider meets Spawn meets
Spawn is a good word.
Something else that I can't place. That was awesome.
Andy, it reminded me like if the Wisp and the Hunter combined.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, okay, Alan, you got to explain the darkness now. You can't leave us in the dark.
Well, the whole novel really is exactly that. It's a exploration of what it is. So I can't really tell you much without spoiling the book. What I can tell you is that what comes after that is that there's this young lad that Matt didn't see who stood in the darkness of the parkland at the end of the alley and watched the whole thing. So he sees it and he's like, "What the hell did I just see?" And he runs to the bin and he takes some photos with his phone, and then he goes back to his boss, who's this really twisted sort of London gangster guy called Vince Stratton, and says, "You won't believe what I saw today." And so then Stratton starts being very interested in Matt McCloud and his abilities. Then at the same time, as there's a girl called Amy Cavendish, who is an Australian, and she's in London working, and she's a palliative care nurse. And she has a very similar ability to Matt's, but it sort of manifests differently, and she uses it very differently. And thanks to Stratton, the Matt and Amy run into each other and discover for the first time in their lives another person who has something similar going on. And so that whole triangle then starts getting into more and more trouble. And throughout the course of the book, they both explore what their power is and what it means and what they can do with it and about it and everything else like that. So that's kind of what the book's about, is them discovering the truth behind what they do.
Reminds me of that show Heroes. Has anyone watched Heroes?
Just the Reborn, the new relaunched one season show.
Really? I watched the old one. I never watched the new one. What was I gonna say? Does he only kill child molesters, or is it anyone that's a bad dude, bad girl, whatever?
Yeah, fundamentally anyone who's bad. He's anyone who's basically that he finds out about. That's what he's like. Works in a warehouse, has a pretty straight up job, and otherwise spends all his time looking for people who are bad people but have managed to avoid justice. This is taking us back to this
justice
we've been talking about.
Yes, back to
yeah, exactly. So anyone who's managed to get away with it and doesn't look like they're going to get dealt with correctly by the law, he finds. So child molesters for sure, but also any other criminals. And Amy Cavendish has a similar sort of methodology, only a bit different. She actually, the whole book actually grew from a short story called Shadows of the Lonely Dead, which was a short story about Amy Cavendish first discovering her ability. And that was a really popular story, and it won an award for me and some stuff like that. But I knew there was a lot more to explore in the subject, and so this novel kind of grew as a sequel to that story. That focuses initially on Matt McCloud, but then sort of the co-protagonist is Amy Cavendish from that story. So deals a lot with death and terminal illness and the justice around things like that. But yeah, it's
how does he
thrilling out.
How does he find out all this information?
He does his research, and I do gloss over a little bit in the book, because I didn't want to get it too sort of bogged down in his,
makes sense.
His research. It's kind of there's some bits sort of fed in about how he learns, what he learns along the way, but the book focuses on the problems he runs into from this particular thing that opens the book, and how he ends up getting entangled with Stratton and him and Amy trying to help each other out and stuff. So that's the sort of inciting incident in the book, and then the tangent goes off to their story, entangled with Stratton and his particular brand of organized crime.
Yeah, I got to say, I wasn't expecting that, and it's, I don't say this often, but it was pretty unique too. Like I haven't heard of a story with that kind of concept to it. You have, to me, it was like, what is this darkness? I wonder if it's like a spiritual thing, demonic, if something like is in him, like a parasite. That's what I wrote. I wrote about an alien parasite that gave people powers if you could control it, or else it just controlled you. But really cool story, Alan.
Well, thanks. This one, I can tell you, it's not an alien parasite.
It's not. Okay.
And by the end of the book, you have some answers. But as with all the best stories, not all the answers, hopefully, because it's nice to not know everything, but hopefully enough that it's a satisfying conclusion.
Very cool.
Are you? So it's a standalone. You're not going to write any more than the. Is there going to be a second one?
I wasn't planning to. It was written as a standalone book, but I have had a lot of people who've read it say, is there going to be more? So I'm not planning it right now, but never say never. You never know quite where these things might go. And as I've said with other things, I would rather leave people wanting more than write more that wasn't any good. So it'll only happen if I have sort of really good ideas that make a really solid story that's worthy of a sequel, which is not something I'm planning or thinking about right now, but these things tend to percolate in the brain, and sometimes they do come up. So yeah, never say never. Who knows? Maybe they will be. I know a lot of people are kind of keen for it, so maybe.
Sounds good, man. Andy, did you have anything to comment on that?
Nope.
Nope. Alan, so where can people find you?
I've got a website which is Alan Baxter Online, or you can also just find it by typing in warriorscribe.com, because that was something somebody called me once and it became a bit of a moniker. So you can find it on warriorscribe.com. And so that's where you can find out all about me and my books and stuff. And there's plenty of social media links there. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, just my name at Alan Baxter on Twitter. That's probably where I'm most active on social media. And you can find all those links on my website.
The cover for Devouring Dark is freaking epic.
It's good, isn't it?
It's really cool. Yeah. How is that even stock photography?
No, that's well, I mean, it's composite stuff. I'm not sure exactly. It's done. Grey Matter Press published that book.
Dang,
and there's and Wendy Saber-Core is the artist. So it's original artwork for that book that I believe is one of those sort of digital composite deals. But yeah, it's pretty epic. I actually got the artist to send me the original artwork, and I have it on a T-shirt that I wear to convention stuff without the typography and stuff like that. So yeah, because it's just such a cool image.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us on air on the Fantasy Fiends podcast, Alan Baxter.
Yeah,
no worries. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you.
Well, who do we have next week, Andy?
Me. Next
Just
week
you.
we're talking about Shields and Shadow.
I won't be here.
Fuck you.
Hey, you told me to watch my language before it started. Piece of shit. Alan, thank you very much, guys. Remember, it's Devouring Darkness. You can find it's on Amazon, right?
Devouring Dark. Yeah, everywhere you'd normally buy books. So yeah, search it up on Amazon. If you go to my website and click on the cover, it'll take you to a page all about the book, and there's buy buttons there that have just got the links for all the different stores. So if you prefer to shop at Amazon or iBooks, or you want paperbacks or whatever, no problem. Find it that way. But yeah, just anywhere you buy books.
Thank you, Alan. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the podcast there. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the Fantasy Fiends podcast. Just remember, we really appreciate you coming and staying with us for this awesome hour. We love you all. We hope you have a wonderful night. And guess what? I just rocked this ending for the first time. Maybe.